Stepped-up advisor. Welcome to the show. Happy Thursday here. I am functioning on a laptop, so bear with me today. But we got an interesting show for you tonight. Saw a little clip on Belfort, thought we'd bring it up. That being said, Craig, welcome to the show.
Yo!
Why didn't they buy? Why didn't
Vegas? How's Vegas, man?
I had to block the blinds back here, but you could see the Rio Casino right there. If I swing it out, you can pretty much.
Do they still have a great breakfast buffet at the Rio?
Yeah, everybody talks about that. All right, it's a little. Can you see?
Yeah.
A little glimpse of skyline here. Craig, why didn't they buy? That's a topic for discussion today.
Why didn't they buy? Jesus, how many days do we have? No, actually, I don't know what you mean. I mean, everybody believes whatever the hell I tell them.
Buyers' disbeliefs. Yeah. How many of those things that are going on in their head, when you're talking and selling a prospect, their mind is just sitting there going, just thinking, right? And just talking to themselves. They're having their own conversation with you, especially if you go through a slide deck and you're just through a deck and never pause, never engage. They're having a conversation with themselves. In most cases, talking themselves out of it, talking to themselves going, why is this bad? Negatives, right? And so, the reality is every buyer comes into a sales situation with preconceived notions. And so, they may have, whether they're buying a car, whether they're buying benefits, they're thinking, they have preconceived notions on the product itself, right? And they understand it a little bit, but they might already say, I hate this product. I hate dealing with this every year, or this car. I know how this car works and where, how fast it goes. And then they have preconceived notions about a salesperson because, car salespeople, right? You know what's going to happen when you go in. You're shopping at the mall. I'm shopping in the mall the other day. I thought of an idea that would be the best idea for a T-shirt. I think it would sell massively. And you go and you wear it to the mall, and the shirt says, "No, I don't need your help." I'm going to make one like that, right? Because you walk into those stores, they can help. No, I don't need your help. And so
I'd wear that as a tie.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that'd be great to bring into a business meeting.
And so some stores I won't even walk into anymore because I don't feel like being bothered by the salesperson. So again, we have a bad rap. We get a bad rap. We know that. But at the end of the day, salespeople make the money go around. So we have to sell people. People need to be sold. They don't realize it. But shit, I can't tell you how many calls that I've been on where I'm like, can you just sell me already? I'm a buyer. I got buy written all over my face, and you can't seem to close me. And now I've changed my mind here. I'm looking for what else should I know? I'm looking for reasons to buy here, and that's what's called Belfort calls the action threshold, right?
Yeah,
I'm a buyer, right? Craig, you're a buyer.
Totally.
People in general are buyers. We are the easiest sale in the world. We like to buy. We feel bad sometimes about the salesperson. You know what? This is like me. I'm going to buy. So there's, he talks about tipping the scale, right? You think of a scale flat across. And so you got negatives and positives. And what we're trying to do is tip the scale of the buyer here. But the problem is the middle of that scale, it may be all the way over here. You may be fighting against a scale that's already tipped far the other way. Okay.
Exactly.
And that one thing could be everything. They may not move unless you convince them on that one thing.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We'll go over some ideas of some answers. Craig is phenomenal at that, repositioning, reframing ideas. But there's logical reasons to buy now. There's logical reasons not to buy now. And we usually hit on the logical reasons. And I've always sold on logic. And it wasn't until recently that I realized there's this whole other side called the emotional side. The emotional reasoning as to why they buy, the emotional reasoning as to why they don't buy. And so we could hit them with everything, Greg, right? We leave the meeting. I just don't know why they bought. There was a $250,000 on the table. Logically, it all made sense. but for whatever reason, I didn't get them emotionally to buy in. I did not tip the scale on their emotional side. And so those are some of the things you're going to have to knock out in order to make the sale. What do you say, Greg?
Well, man, you teed up a really, really full plate. Yeah, so we'll kind of start at a macro high level and then work it down to a low micro level. And kind of, I think something that every broker deals with is trying to convert that fully insured to self-insured, and all of the preconceived ideas that buyer might have from one end of the continuum being, I don't know anything about it, to the other end of the continuum. I had a bad experience 14 years ago, and I'll never do that. It's always a great one. So you talked about, the sales process. And so for those guys and gals who are a little more experienced, like me, old, what you have is you grew up in the 20th century, and all of the sales training was on 27 ways to overcome objections. And it was very, very logic based. And so now, because of brain science, we've learned a hell of a lot. And so now we know that you have to involve emotions. You have to get people to share and be vulnerable and tell you the truth, because you've made your conversation with them, not your pitch, your conversation with them, a safe place, a judgment-free zone where they can share with you what they really think, and you can share with them what you think, and see if there's some parity, see if there's some common ground there. And then, of course, if they're comfortable, the next step could be, and so all depends on your style and how you want to handle it. Back in the day, you talked about buying a car. Guys, buying a car used to be an entirely different situation because of what finance calls the asymmetry of information. The car dealer had information that none of the consumers had. All you knew was the MSRP sticker. That's it back in the day. You'd go in there, and they would grind you for 3 hours, hand you off to some guy, and then he'd always have to get up, or she'd have to get up and go and talk to some manager, some faceless person. And they go back and forth, and they literally would try to grind you into taking their price because you had no information. Information was power. Now, fast forward 30 years, hell, the buyer probably knows more about all of the pricing, the incentives, the manufacturer's rebates, and everything than the guy trying to sell them the car. And so you have so much more power in negotiation advantages nowadays when you're going to buy a car. And so think about healthcare purchasing is a similar thing. Now, of course, depending on who you're talking to and the sophistication level of that buyer, most of them are completely clueless, but they sure have a lot of ideas on how they think it works based on their experience of having been involved in buying health insurance for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What do you say, John?
So talk to me about that for a second. Let's say we're in a meeting, we're starting out, and we're gonna try to get some of that information out. We're always in the beginning through our intelligence gathering, trying to figure out the buyer's disbeliefs, right?
Yeah.
Things that they know, their preconceived notions. Give me an example of an opening that you use now that you gave me recently to make it very light and friendly.
John, let me be clear. Before we start today, I want you to know that I'm not going to ask you to fire, replace, change, or get rid of anyone or anything that you currently work with. You can keep everything the same. That relieves the pressure of, I know this guy's going to ask me to fire someone and hire him or hire his firm. So that's an easy way. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's one of them. The other one you gave me was regarding, this is safe place, blah, blah, blah. I want it to be a dialogue.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Hey, John, today it's really important that we have a conversation, right? I don't want to show up and give you a monologue and, go through a bunch of slides and never ask you a question and find out what's meaningful to you. So let's agree that we're going to make this a safe place, a judgment-free zone where we can just have a conversation about insights and philosophy as it relates to benefits, healthcare, and your employees, team members, and associates. Something like that.
Simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, it's like, well, nobody starts off like that. Well, let me tell you about our firm. We're 87 years old, and we've got 107,000 years of experience. Yeah, there's still people selling that way, John. I mean, you laugh. I've sat in on some live meetings back pre-COVID, and it was just like,
Yeah, I mean, there's, Belfort talks about getting them to the 310s, and you've got to get them there on your company, on you, and on your product. So, I understand giving a background on the company, but certain ones are just a little too much or a little over the top, I think. But, it depends on the buyer, right? It depends on, and we can talk about that. We talk about the action threshold, right? Salesperson, easy. When you're talking to an owner, I love when an advisor gets me on the phone with an owner to talk about self-funding.
Yeah.
He's a buyer. He likes risk, right? So I'm going to sell him on the reward. It's not going to take as much to get him to convert and tip the scale on the owner. CFO, a little bit easier as well. And HR obviously is the hardest. And they have so many preconceived notions already built in their head. And one of them, like you said, I don't want to fire my broker. And so how are some of the reasons that you can tip the scales on these guys? Greg, what are some of the things that you do in the beginning to get the scale tipping down your way? The flash roll, what are some of the things you use?
Yeah, so for us, I'll throw in a flash roll, what we call a flash roll, to talk about stories that give us authority and positions of authority in their mind, because I'm talking about examples of companies with either logos they recognize or size images in their minds that, of course, are bigger than them, which by definition means then obviously you know how to handle us, right? Now, if you don't have those, then you have to modify your flash roll to be before versus after. So we met an organization, and they were spending, $15,732 per employee per year on their health care. And in as short a period as 24 months, we lowered that to $9,872, creating a $6,000 per employee per year profit. Oh, and by the way, that represented, you don't have to say how many employees, but that was, they can do math in their head, which most of them can't. So you don't worry about that. That was a $1.2 million profit to the company. And when I asked the owner, $1.2 million of earnings for your company, that should be worth about $12 million of increase in your net worth. Now, could you ever see your healthcare operating expense actually generating net worth and earnings for your company? And seeing we were able to do that. And so while I'm telling them a story, I'm conditioning them on how to think about healthcare in a different way. It's not just OpEx, operating expense. It's not just a liability. It's a source of potential cash flow and earnings for your company, which then by definition, depending on who you're talking to, means your net worth goes up, pal. And that's why you can never get rid of us. So, there's an easy example of how to have a conversation and spin it. So you tell a story. You use whatever scenario that is. Hell, that could be a 50-man group you're talking about. It doesn't matter. Here's a before, right? What's that Tom Cruise movie, man? I like that movie. They're in the car at the end of the movie, and she's like, with me, without me, with me, without me. And, that's the story of why they want to ultimately retain your services as a consultant, because without you, they're going to pay $15,000, but with you, it could be 10. And that difference is very meaningful, not only for the business owner, the CFO, their significance, their job security, the net worth of the company, but also for all of their employees, associates, team members, whatever they call them, for their livelihood, because, hey, human resources. What's the impact? What I just want you to imagine for a moment. What would be the impact on your employees' personal lives if you never had to increase their premium contributions or deductibles ever again? Ask them that question and paint a picture. Now, let's fast forward. So imagine it's been 3 years and you haven't had to increase deductibles or premium contributions. What kind of a competitive advantage do you think you'd be able to have when you're interviewing potential new hires? Because every employer I hear is having a really difficult time getting people to not only show up for an interview, but to hire people. It's hard to find talent. So odds are you're going to have to probably hijack some talent from another company. And so if your healthcare was a competitive advantage, could you see the possibility that not only could you maybe have an advantage, but then you also wouldn't have to pay them the very top dollar to steal them away because your medical coverage is so good? What about the knowledge workers, right? You told me you have like 4 generations at your workforce. Is it safe to assume that the 44-year-old who's been here 20 years probably has a skill level that would classify him as like a knowledge worker? And it just so happens that over 40, the chronic conditions start, the medical, the claims start to go up. Do you think that if healthcare was super meaningful to them, that your turnover rate might go down or the retention of your knowledge workers would increase? You see, and so you have conversations with them, you engage them, you prompt them to think about healthcare in ways that are meaningful to their job, their career, their lives every day. And in the process of saying, I know you, understand you, it gives them confidence and certainty in you to overcome their fears, uncertainty, and doubts, the FUDs.
Yeah, and it's just moving them down the scale, right? And there's, Craig gave you a bunch of different ways there. I mean, other things, that you could use are, your brochures, your testimonials. Craig, you
copies of the check. Yeah.
Case studies, all these different things are just ways to move them down the scale and get more yeses, get more positives, and break away the negatives. Because again, they're entering this with preconceived notions, and we already know what they think about healthcare.
Self-funding is risky, John.
Hey, Craig, give me the answer to that one.
Self-funding,
that's one that would come up.
Risky. Well, it's funny because I've been in this business a long time, dealt with literally thousands of renewals. And what I've learned in that time frame is that words are really important. So like right now, we can say things and we're not sure what we're talking about, right? And so, a silly example, if I'm talking about my hand, you may not realize that I'm talking about this side of my hand because that's my perspective. And so what I don't know when you say that self-funding is risky, what does that mean exactly? Is there something that happened in your past that made you come to that conclusion? Because the reason I mention it is because, over 90% of employees that are insured in America are covered by self-insured medical plans. So obviously, there's something going on.
I like that you flip it to the question to get it out of them versus the trap that we fall for. Because we're so smart is,
yeah.
Well, no, it's not risky. Let me tell you why.
No, you're going to save premium tax 2.35%. And no, nobody cares about that.
People still have that on proposal.
But you gotta find out. I mean, this is what I've come to know as I've gotten older. I don't know what anybody even means by savings. We can't even agree on what that means. I mean, healthcare can't agree on the definition of quality. For 35 years, I've been in this business. There's no one definition of quality. And so the consequence of that is the only thing that's relevant is what's relevant to the prospect. And you better find out what that is. So when they tell you that my employees want to understand it, is that really their objection? Or my premise is, here's my belief system. I believe that most of the what I call the red herring objections, the knee-jerk reactions, the silly little things that everybody, because I could ask any broker, what are the top 8 objections? And they're probably the same for everybody. And the reason that they all give them is because they work on 9 out of 10 brokers. Because like I've said before many times in the show, the buyers are actually probably better and more experienced at sales than the brokers are. Because most brokers don't do. Can you imagine if, John, if I came to you and go, hey, Tom Brady's just a savant. He doesn't even practice. What? Not possible. How many brokers practice?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation. I had a conversation probably 2-3 weeks ago, and the HR person, there was two of them, and they were difficult, and it was a larger case, so I wanted to take a shot, and I was just throwing out, just more credibility, brochures, testimonials, all those things, rebuttal and everything, and just wearing them down until the end, and they finally agreed with me to an extent to take the next step. Right, the point of the call was to get them to buy into taking the next step or looking at change. Now, in the end, I didn't get the case. Some was around the company, not knowing the company. So, maybe I made a mistake. I did not cover and break the disbelief of them not being comfortable enough with the company name or who they are. And so what did I do? I think I called you the next day and said, here's an idea. How am I going to talk about my company? It's been around 5 years, but we've been doing it for 10 years. How do I strategically say this in the beginning of the meeting to let them know that, hey, we've been around for longer than 5 years. We just didn't have the brand and going out with it. And so I came up with a way to explain that to them and tell them, hey, we've been doing this for the last 10 years on a private basis, but we've only opened this up publicly for the last 5 years. And so just going back, like you just said, practicing Tom Brady. Well, I knew that was one of the main keys that was advised to me by the broker. That is why maybe they didn't buy. And so I don't want to let that happen again. And obviously, when you're meeting with prospects, you can't always get feedback. Unfortunately, I was able to on this one. But I mean, if you're not getting better and trying to figure these things out, all you got to do is record the meeting and go back and listen to it.
Oh my goch, that's so good. Yes.
Slap yourself in the face 5 times.
Yeah. That's the best thing about Zoom is you can record the darn show and then, watch and listen to yourself. We're getting some good feedback here. Spencer says, I'm not interested. Spencer, you have to do your own version of this, right? Okay. I've personally never heard that, but if I heard that just off the top of my head, I'd say, Spencer, first, let me apologize, right? Because I've done a really bad job of explaining to you how 8 of the 10 top national consulting firms in the country who do a combined $40 billion in revenue, making recommendations to companies just like yours, use our solution. So if I've failed to even provide an interest level, then I'll take full responsibility. What exactly is confusing to you?
Yeah, and I think
a version of that for you.
That usually necessarily you get in the meeting. It's more of probably telemarketing or when you're calling, and it's a different route, it's a different pitch, it's sizzle, right? But
telemarketing's different.
Telemarketer would always say, because how many times a day would they say we're not interested, but you're interested in saving money? Again, it's just a right over the objection. Bob, can I say one last thing? Bob, but can I say one more thing? And he just psychologically gets him. So that one sounds more like a telemarketing one, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We just renewed. Oh, that's fantastic. The timing is perfect. Yeah. Because now all the busy work is over with and you actually have time to think, to take in the knowledge and insights and experience of other people, to find out what the solutions are, what other companies are doing, what your competitors are doing. And,
you just renewed great. I mean, you just renewed great. Talk to me about that. How did that go? What did the renewal look like? What has the experience been? Have you changed anything? What was that like? And again, you're just gathering intelligence. Even they kick it down the road. It's always going to be, we just renewed. Call me back before we renew, or we're just about to renew. So it doesn't matter. They're always going to have 1, 2, 3 different. We just renewed. Call me back during renewal, or we're just going to renew. We're just about to renew. Call me back next year. So it doesn't matter. It's just a bullshit objection, and you got to dance around it. Let's see here. You need to talk to HR. I think I gave Sean. If Sean's listening on this, is when they push you down HR and you've got the owner and the CFO. It's very simple. We're looking to have a strategic conversation with you, and that conversation happens with you, Mr. CFO, or the owner in the C-suite. Our firm, we don't engage with the operational level manager until later in the conversation. I just want to have a strategic conversation with you first. And if we can get past that and you want to have operations involved, great, that's fine. But I mean, that's the way that I handle it.
Yeah, to me, that's definitely one way. And then there's so many angles that I've come up with that one on. Based on publicly available information, CFO, I got to tell you that what we're talking about is a strategic conversation. Why do I say that? Because I know based on experience of dealing with other companies that if we can show you how to liberate capital that's trapped in your OpEx and free up interest-free working capital, unlike the bank, they charge you money when you need a working capital line of credit. We can find you an interest-free working capital line of credit. It's trapped in your OpEx. And that's a strategic decision, especially when the number has 2 commas in it. So exactly based on the information that we've, gleaned from publicly available data on your company, I would expect that number to be, whatever it would be, $5 million of interest-free working capital. So let me ask you a simple question. I mean, what would your CEO want you to do with $5 million of interest-free working capital that you created out of thin air because you're an awesome CFO? And now I just changed the conversation.
Take that to the bank. Hey, side note, High Stakes Advise in 2021, August 9th, 10th, out near Huntington Beach, California, right on the beach. If you ain't going to be there, I feel sorry for you. Can you afford not to show up?
You can call us 3 years from now and go, man, it sounded too good to be true, and I wish I would have come earlier.
Yeah. You're gonna miss out. Sign up. I think the new ticket prices are changing in a week. Go ahead to the webpage, Heads Up Advisor, check that out, and we'll go from there. What else we got, Craig? Trust. I mean, how do you get past the trust conversation? I mean, because you've gotta trust me. Warren Buffett says I look at 3 things before I do business with somebody, and it's crazy because of the stuff that I've been through in business, and it always applies. It's a really great methodology. Is do I like them? Do I respect them? Do I trust them? If any one of those 3 are a no, I don't do business with them. Okay? So they may like you, they may respect you.
The problem is you got round heels. You'll lay over really quick because you're a buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you learn later, but that's something that comes across a lot. Is well, first of all, I mean, when I was first starting the agency, me and another agent would go out a lot, and things weren't closing, and I started realizing, I'm like, I think this guy's blowing the sale, which he was, because as soon as I stopped, he started closing. So people just didn't like him. Yeah, he was not good. Okay. And he thought that I needed the help, and it was in reality it was him. It was funny, but they didn't like him. And then as soon as I started going, they started buying because, right? They know, like, and trust me at that point. And so trust is a thing. How do you think you get over trust with a buyer? Because look, they think agents, when you call, well, every agent tells me that 20, 40%. If you're calling saying I'm going to save you 20, 40%, stop doing that.
John, when was the last time you made a change of a consultant, an advisor, a CPA, a doctor, a broker? When was the last time? Okay, so tell me about that experience. What was it exactly that gave you the confidence that they could probably do what they said they could do? Was it something that they told you? Was it something that you watched or read in their propaganda or paraphernalia? Spell that out. What did that look like? What did it sound like? What did it feel like? How did it work out? So you're confident in your judgment that, based on your experience, you've had success making decisions to make changes that turned out to be good later. Because, if every time they make a decision, it turns out bad, then guess what? They're going to be apprehensive. They're going to be afraid to make a change. It's why 80%, according to studies of pitches to whatever the incumbent is, not just insurance, 80% result in no change, because the buyer is not able, the seller is not able to convince the buyer, why now? Why me? Yeah, and
there's not enough positives, and you're not breaking the negative bias beliefs that they come in
That's what Jordan's video was. He was talking about, hey, some people need like, oh no, I gotta have, right? So me and John, we buy easy. I don't have to know everything. I just have to be whatever level of confidence I need for that dollar amount. Like I was just on the phone with somebody that they had a really interesting screening process. I'm willing to pay them to be a coach of mine, right? And so this is I think my second call. Yeah, I think it was my second call, right? And so one guy was in Australia, this guy was in England, and so I'm talking to him, and after 20 minutes, I just started laughing. He goes, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, I'm laughing at how long you take to make a pre-frame when I don't need that long, right? I know what you're doing. What's it going to be worth to your company, and how's that going to make you feel? What's life going to be like if you can do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I know what's going on. I don't need all that to make a decision. So what's the bottom line?
Yeah, you've got to figure out your buyer. I've done that too.
You do.
I'll get on a call and I'll help the sales guy because they'll start with that stuff, right? They're doing the sales technique on me, and I know what they're doing. I'm like, look, just get to it. I'm a buyer. I'm ready to buy now. When I bought the outreach program, just tell me why you're better than so-and-so and tell me what I need to know. I don't need to know all the other bullshit. Even car dealers, when I'm buying a car, the first thing I say, look, Bob, I'm here to buy a car. I'm buying a car today. It's either from you or another one of these dealerships. So I'm letting you know I am a buyer here. Don't screw around and give me the bullshit. I got to talk to my manager. Because you'll blow the sale. I will walk out on you. And so, gauging it to see how far you got to tip the scales with HR, you're just going to have to take some time. And what did I say about trust? You said, do you interview? I remember a guy used to ask all the time, do you interview advisors every year? And so when was the last time you made a change? And then
that is a great question because we haven't changed in 19 years. Okay. You better figure out how to sell against that.
Yeah. It's So do you shop out every year? Because it was just an easy conversation where you trap them and they don't realize it. And when's the last time you changed? Oh, we haven't changed in 8 years. So you shop out every year and you waste brokers' time and you just go through the motion. So there's pretty much no opportunity to win the case here. And obviously you're saying that in your head, but maybe it's a trust issue. Maybe you find out, oh, really? Well, how come you never changed the advisor? Has he been doing that good of a job? Oh, well, it's my cousin. Or, I hug and kiss him. Whatever it is, you're already finding out early on that's one of the biggest things you're going to have to go over to tip that.
You know what I found out, John, in my years of experience is that sometimes, I'm not saying this is the case with your scenario, but sometimes you outgrow your broker. And so I understand it's your cousin, but if we were to do an analysis and you were to pay us to do the analysis, and we discovered that on a $2 million budget, there was $262,000 a year in fraud, waste, or abuse or overspending that you could recapture as a company and keep and either, use it for business or give your employees pay raises. What would the CEO say about the broker being the cousin? In other words, how big does the financial impact have to be before the CEO is ready to have a conversation with their cousin going, look, I can't afford your learning curve any longer. Okay. And then if you need to, that'll get some traction. That'll get them thinking. So you have to disturb the automatic pattern that has worked on every other broker who's never got them to move in 8 years and go, there's a dollar amount. There's always a dollar amount. So how big does it have to be? And then your fallback position is, of course, so if we could make this a soft landing for the cousin, what if we were to include him in on a percentage of the compensation for the next couple of years and just sort of wean him off? See, and now you've got a conversation that can go to the next level.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out what is that tipping point. What do they need? That conversation I brought up earlier, I pretty much asked them because I knew they were doing fairly well. They went to a carrier ASO, and I said, "What is the number? What does it need to look like for you guys to change?" Because obviously you've already got the okay on the owner on the renewal, and it's very unlikely you can change it. Well, if we had better benefits. and it was $250,000 less, we'd have to change. And of course, I was able to do that on this particular group, which I knew asking that because I'd reviewed the data prior and they were overpaying, but it still didn't go. So again, maybe it was the business. Seth says financial people are never paying attention until they hear or see the numbers. I show numbers or potential savings in the beginning. You know, when I go into these presentations with advisors where we're pitching the consortium, I put together a pro forma that I stole from you, Craig. And the first thing I do is I show them, I'll go to the spreadsheet, I show them the pro forma over the 5 years and say, we're here to have a $4 million conversation. The decision that's made today is going to be worth $4 million, whether to do it or not to do it. And that's kind of what I start out with, just as a, you know, you call it a flash roll if you want, but it's important and gets it in the back of their head of what they're thinking. And maybe they pay attention a little bit more. What are some of the things, Craig, you think you could say, and we'll wrap it after this, to get people to listen more in the beginning, right? I'd say the trick is speaking. You know, people, you call on people. You call on people in the beginning of a talk or in the meeting, even these Zooms. I will call on each one of them to go, hey, you're not going to fall asleep on me in this meeting. You're not going to play on your cell phone because I may call on you, so you better be paying attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, an easy way to do that is to say, look, I really don't have any idea if our value proposition is a fit for your company and your team members. So let's agree that as part of the conversation that I'm going to ask you some questions, right? And it's going to help give me some context as to how I articulate and frame what it is we do and how we do it for companies just like you. And then we'll have an interaction, right? I'll ask you, you'll share some data, and then that will allow us to have a deeper, more meaningful conversation. That's an easy, you know, you're basically setting the table to go, these are the rules for the call. They're very easy. Does that make sense to you? Right? You just ask them, are you comfortable with that? And then they'll tell you. They'll always say yes. Of course, because in the typical fashion, the people are showing up going, features and benefits all about us. Features and benefits all about us. And then at the end, they're like, any questions? That's brutal. Yeah, we can't do that.
I said, we'll wrap it there. I think you guys got enough. I had a whole list here. Didn't get to all of them, but a lot of objections. Break the buyers' disbeliefs. Turn them into buyers. And we're not trying to turn people that say no into buyers. We're trying to turn people that say maybe, let me think about it, yada, yada, yada. Not everybody's a buyer, right?
For sure.
There's tonality and speaking. Talking speed impact the call. Yeah, tonality is huge.
All right, if you're talking to somebody in the South, you better slow down.
That's my challenge. I got to slow down with some of these Southerners. But high stakes advising, be there. See you August 9th, 10th. Going to be the best event in the industry again, or your money back. All right, guys, be good. We'll see you next week. Same place, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Happy hunting. Go make some sales, baby.
Right on.